I think this would be, I'd love to hear everyone's take on this, because I think that this is really interesting, especially being that we have founded this group, mentorWIT. We know that typically women tend to be underrepresented in technology fields. So Harvard Business Review recently, 2016, published an article that says receiving mentorship from senior males can increase compensation and career progress satisfaction for women, particularly for those working in male-dominated industries. So I'd love to know if you agree, and how do you think we can make this more prevalent, or what advice would you have for the men in attendance today on how they can help elevate and empower the women that are in their industries? Kate, do you want to lead us off here?
I'd love to. I do agree with this article quite a bit, actually. Most of my mentors have been male. Most of my bosses have been male, especially since I got into tech. They've been priceless, honestly, for, when I have to go and negotiate a raise or accept a job offer or something like that, reminding me of my value, which sounds a little bit crazy, but I think a lot of women really forget their accomplishments and we tend to just downplay everything. I'm massively generalizing here, but I think there's some truth to that. And having those people who can build you up when you have to go into those sort of scary situations and really advocate for yourself is incredibly important. And I found that both the male and female mentors in my life, but particularly the male ones, are really quite good at that. I would argue that men have a big role to play in helping female identifying people reach higher heights. I think it's really important to be allies and to help with this situation if you really want to walk the walk. Some pretty easy, practical, simple things to do. It's sort of widely known that women tend to, sit back at the table at meetings quite often, get cut off at meetings. This has happened to me all the time, and I've seen it, out in the world quite a lot. So one of the easiest things to do as an ally is to say, to use your voice and say, I'd like to hear what Jane thinks, or, Jane got cut off. What were you going to say? And then also making sure that you give credit where credit is due. If someone comes up with an idea, you make sure that you don't just have that idea sort of assimilate into the group and actually point it out once in a while that so-and-so came up with this idea. I think those are sort of the easiest, you can do that tomorrow as an ally to help make mentorship for women and people who identify as women a lot more prevalent.
Excellent points, and I love that those are really easy things that they could just go and do tomorrow. So that's awesome. Zainul, what are your thoughts around this article?
I think from my perspective and what I've seen really be successful in the broader context in business and outside of business in the not-for-profit sector, or when I've had exposure to government and other things, is ultimately creating a merit-based culture. And in order to have a merit-based culture, you have to have inclusiveness. And if you are not being inclusive, then you are actually harming your success. And so it's the individuals and leaders and people who believe that I believed and have seen be most successful. So from my perspective, it's not about men or women or people who identify with any gender or race or religion that are accountable for creating that culture. It's, do you want to be successful? And if you and the glory of the environment that we happen to live in here in Canada, in a merit-based economy and culture, in a multicultural environment, is that we do have a level of inclusiveness that doesn't exist in other countries, and we should thrive on that, and we should celebrate it, and we should leverage that to be more successful. And when people say the world needs more Canada, I think that's what they're really talking about. So I think we should be proud of the cultural principles that we have. We can't take them for granted, and we can't assume they exist. We have to call ourselves out on any biases that we have and we see as leaders, and we have to hold ourselves accountable for creating cultures of inclusiveness, because if we do, we will all benefit from that from a success standpoint.
I'm so we're recording this session because there's so much good stuff coming out of here, and I'm not taking any notes, obviously. So this is great. I'm going to go back and rewatch this. Melanie, what are your thoughts around this?
So Diana, I want to thank Kate. I love those immediate pragmatic suggestions. And Zainal, you spoke to my passion about this fantastic country we live in. So now I'm going to be a little controversial here, and I'm going to be a bit of the Debbie Downer. So this is where you can go, wah, wah. Because I'm going to speak on a practical nature about, we're dealing with the Me Too movement. I've experienced things in my career where I worked in oil and gas, heavily male dominated. In fact, there were only 2 women in a senior level position. And as I was moving up the company, same experience as you, Brandy, was promoted, supervising people who were much more seasoned than I was at the time. And it was palpable, sorry, that the men were uncomfortable even being alone in a room with another woman. Now, we don't like to talk about that because that's not how we like to think, and we want to pretend that we are going to be inclusive. And I love what Zainal said, we want to be a merit-based culture. But in order to do that, I'm going to argue that we have to train our managers. It's not enough just to say we want it. We have to give people some experience. We have to have awkward, crucial conversations. And like this, where I'm saying that some men will not be comfortable mentoring women. And that's just a fact. And I've experienced that over and over in my career. It's not a popular thing to say. It's not a comfortable thing to say. But we have to acknowledge it. And once we acknowledge it, then we can say, and so what? How do we fix it? How do we have those conversations? How do we offer training and development? How do we offer merit, in other words, incentives, so that people do mentor regardless of gender identification, that people do even bother to mentor people? So a little bit of a different wrench.
That's great. That's awesome. And Brandy, what are your thoughts around this?
So I hated the question, to be honest. I hated this question, but then when you do read the article, it gets at a little bit more of a deeper sense of what it's saying. So I kind of agree with Zainal in that whether men or women, you got to find those champions or cheerleaders, if you will, who are going to help propel you forward at the right times. But it's actually in your work, in the things you do, though, that get you at the business table. So you need to do the work, and we can't be flying the flag of, oh, me too, and sorry, controversial, but you got to do the work if you want to be at the business table with the old boys club that there still exists in organizations. And I think that performance should dictate compensation and progression. But yes, we need to help train on that and start cultivating these chats and this type of conversation in workplaces, for sure.
That's great. Such excellent points. Thank you, everyone.